that is different about it from the other knives is that the blade is not flexible, because in the processing plants they do not have to skin the fish with the fillet knife. All they're doing is really deboning or taking the fillet off of the frame or off of the bones of the fish. So this knife is relatively stiff. It is not the type of knife that you would use to fillet a fish like a bass or a bluegill or a tilapia. This is a relatively inexpensive knife that you can purchase at any department store, and it's flexible. The reason that we want it flexible is not necessarily to cut the meat off the bone, but to remove the skin from the flesh without tearing up the flesh or the skin. It does a very nice job of that. What we're trying to do is really keeping that blade flat on the table like this and kind of easing the meat away from the skin. This knife right here, which is a little more expensive model, not all expensive, I think it cost around $12 or $13, is a real nice fillet knife in that it has not only a flexible blade but a flexible handle. And if you've ever tried to fillet a bluegill or a small bass or other small fish, you find real quickly that it's necessary to have a very flexible blade to remove that skin from the flesh. This knife happens to be my favorite knife, and I think it cost about $2.50 or $3. It's a stainless steel knife that I bought from some Alabama 4-H'ers a few years ago. It's my favorite knife in that it has just the right flexibility, holds an edge real well, easy to clean. The point on the knife, though, is not like this knife in my right hand, the yellow-handled knife, in that it makes it more difficult to ease the flesh away from the ribs on bluegill and bass. But it is a good knife for catfish. I kind of like that knife, especially for catfish. This is a less expensive knife. It's a foldable knife. It folds together like this. You could carry that in your fishing equipment and use it and get by with filleting fish with this knife, although it's not one of my favorites. In fact, I've only used it once or twice. But if I had a preference today, what I'd probably use is this knife and this knife and this knife. This knife being for the catfish, and this one being for the catfish, and this knife right here, the flexible bladed one, for the bass and the bluegill. The advantages of this knife right here next to that one is the blade is longer. So if your fish are bigger, you need a longer blade. And some blades are even longer than this, and it's important to kind of size your blade to the size of the fish that you catch. Other things that you might need: paper towels. Your hands get messy when you're working with fish, and it's nice to kind of clean up the board and use some paper towels to clean it up. Remember then that it's important to be set up properly. You want to have a right table, want to have a board that you can cut on. It has to be large enough, have the right knives, have the right skinning pliers, and also at your side you really should have a depository for the fish waste that you're going to have, because that can be kind of messy. It's nice to put a nice garbage bag inside of your plastic container so that you can remove it and then dispose of it properly. We're going to move on now and look at some of the fish that we're going to dress, and the common fish in Alabama that you might run into when you're out fishing, or the ones that you might buy in the grocery store and further process. This is a channel catfish. There are about 30 different kinds of catfish in the United States, and this species is found all the way from the Canadian border to into Mexico. This is the one that is so popular in the farm-raised catfish industry. In fact, about 500 million pounds are grown by farmers across the southeastern United States. This is the one that you're going to find in the grocery stores in almost all cases. Several things that people get afraid of about catfish are the spines. There's 3 different spines here that can hurt a person, but if you're careful and you approach it right, you won't have any problem. The way to approach it is from the front. I always like to wear the cotton glove because it grips, and Michael's going to show you later how to use his plastic glove. That's what he likes. But I like to approach it from the front like this, where you actually put the hand over the eyes of the fish and use these pectoral spines on the side of the fish as handles. Those are the handles. Now, each of those pectoral spines on the side here are very sharp. So if you're really afraid of that, the best thing to do is cut them right off so that they can't poke your hand. There's still some serrations on the inside of those spines, and that's one of the other reasons to wear a glove, because if you do like 50 pounds of these fish, you're going to wear the insides of your fingers out to the point where they're going to be very sore the next day after you get done processing them, very raw. There's also a dorsal spine here. This is the dorsal fin of the fish, and there's a spine that's attached to part of that fin, and it is also very sharp. And later on, what we're going to do is turn that fish over and hold it upside down to do some of the skinning. And what I like to do is just simply remove it with the skinning pliers. Skinning pliers is a nice little handy tool for doing jobs like this, removing the fins. So the next thing you have to do once you're ready with the fish is to start the process of skinning. When you go and watch some of the fishermen on the river who have been commercial fishing for a long time, what they do to start skinning the fish is they get behind this bony structure on the fish, grip it very tight, and pull the skin down. My hands aren't strong enough because I don't do this very often, and most people wouldn't be able to do that unless they process a tremendous amount of fish. That's one of the other points I want to make, is that if you're going to get good at this, it has to be done over and over and over again, and you will get better with time the more fish you do. What I like to do is to make a cut right here right at the edge of the bony structure on the head of the fish. I approach it with my cotton glove, use those pectoral fins as the grips, and make a small cut right here through the skin. You don't have to cut deep into the meat. All you're trying to do is get a location that you can grip with the skinning pliers. I do the left side the same way, and we have broken the skin so that we're able to pick it up with the skinning pliers. Put the knife down, grab the skin from this side. This is where I start all the time. And when you're gripping the fish, sometimes it's a little hard to do that, and that's why Michael's going to show you how to do it with a nail. But I grip the fish like this, and I pull. If you notice, the skin wanted to come down the side like this. That's normal. It always goes in one direction. Don't try to peel it like a banana and expect it to go towards the tail. It simply goes in one direction all the time, and just let it go in that direction. What I'll do sometimes then is go into the same location and pick it up to make it go a little farther. Like that. It also went in that same direction. If you turn it over, you're going to find that you'll get a similar movement of the skin, tearing of the skin down the side of the fish. This one just happened to go a little farther than normal. It's because this fish has been on ice and it's a little stiff. They're much easier to skin when they're fresh and not iced, but in this case they are iced, like a lot of people would have fish after they've been fishing for a day or gone to the fish market and bought them whole. So then once it's down that far, it can be pulled. You see how this nice skinning pliers picks up that flesh, or the skin, and then it kind of comes off like a banana, and you can come down and trim it up, the little pieces of skin that are left, like that. Now, what you have is a partially skinned fish, because if you look, a lot of people might waste this portion of the fish because there's skin on it. What you need to do is turn it over in your hand, and that's why we cut the dorsal fin off. And if you look at this skin here, it is connected a little bit to that fin. We're going to come back, turn it in our hand upside down. The dorsal fin is removed so it won't poke your hand, and just remove it up the belly. And this section of the fish is called the belly of the fish, and we remove the skin so that we can get every bit of the meat off that whole fish. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the head off the fish without wasting a lot of meat. It's really important that you not waste meat, because you paid for this product either in how you bought it at the grocery store or when you went fishing. Interesting little piece of information is that it costs more than $10 a pound to catch a fish in the United States. That includes things like the boat and the motor and the travel and the sandwiches you eat and the soft drinks or whatever. And it's expensive to catch a fish. Therefore, you certainly don't want to waste any of the meat. It's good to know how to get most of the meat off the bone. So what I like to do is get way up inside that into the jowls of the fish right here and make an incision, make a cut, so that we remove that portion of the soft flesh from the head. And I've seen a lot of people do this, and when you want to completely remove that head from the frame of the fish, you find people who like to saw across the vertebrae here. That's a very hard bony structure. Not only will it dull your knife and maybe even damage your knife, it's just about impossible to do. So the best thing to do is just pick it up with your other hand, and instead of, now that it's cut all the way around, all you have to do is twist. And part of the entrails are removed in this fashion. Once we've removed the head from the catfish, the next thing that we need to do is go to the vent and cut up the belly like this. That's all you need to do with a knife. You open it up, and there's still some entrails left in there, some fat, in the dorsal kidney. And that's where the skinning pliers again comes in handy. Skinning pliers can be used to remove that dorsal fat and the other innards. Entrails, that's the correct word to use.